Delacroix mansion had always been a monument to perfection. White marble framed the hushed hallways. Persian rugs flowed like rivers of wine beneath carefully positioned ebony furniture, and the gardens on the east side were still trimmed with almost mathematical precision, even as winter approached. But there was one side of the property that stood out, a forgotten wing. To the north, time seemed to stand still there. The air was thicker, the silence deeper. The structure of the house seemed to reject that part of it like an amputated limb that still hurt, even though it was absent. No one entered the house. No servants. No visitors. Only the butler Oliver dared to cross the dark wooden double doors to dust once a quarter, under strict orders not to touch anything. Ezra Delacroix, heir to a fortune forged in steel and elegance, rarely mentioned the north wing, and when he did, his words came with the harshness of something one had tried to forget. But on this cold October morning, he stood right outside those doors, hands in his pockets, chin slightly lowered, eyes fixed on the worn gilt hardware. The clock in the tower chimed 9 times. Each chime reverberated in Ezra's chest like a reminder that something was about to be unearthed. "Miss Valli is arriving this afternoon, sir," Oliver announced, approaching discreetly. He stopped a few steps away, respecting the space that Ezra always kept around him like an invisible wall. "She's confirmed for 3 o'clock. Ezra didn't answer right away. His eyes were still fixed on the door. There was something there that was pulling him, something that had never been said out loud, not even to Oliver, who knew everything, or almost everything, about the Delacroix family. "Make sure she comes alone. No assistants, no cameras, no public notes," he said finally. "Naturally, she has already been informed, and according to the dossier, she works discreetly, specializing in pieces with a personal, emotional charge." Ezra nodded slightly, still not looking at the butler. "Take her directly to the central hall. Show her the 3 marked mirrors and nothing else. If she asks about the others, tell her they are out of scope." "Yes, sir." There was a moment of silence between the two. Oliver hesitated before adding, "What about Mrs. Margot's diary? Is it still locked away?" Ezra finally looked at him. His gaze was dark as volcanic glass, untouched, as it should remain. Oliver just nodded. He knew that insisting would be useless. That diary was a blind spot that not even the light of dawn dared to touch. At 3 o'clock sharp, the sound of the doorbell echoed through the halls of the mansion. Ezra did not come down to greet her. He watched from the top of the staircase, as if he were an ancient king watching a stranger enter his forbidden kingdom. Clara Valli crossed the threshold with firm steps, still taking off the wool coat she was wearing over her shoulders. She carried a time-worn leather briefcase and an expression that mixed calm and sharp attention. Her eyes, a green darkened by the cloudy sky, scanned the details of the mansion as if reading a hidden book. Ezra leaned forward slightly, curious. She was different from what he had imagined. He had expected someone more rigid, more technical, but there was a controlled softness about Clara that defied the oppressive atmosphere of the house. Oliver led her into the central hall of the north wing. The wooden doors creaked open, revealing a hallway that smelled of unopened books and damp wood. Antique rugs covered the floor, but the walls, for the most part, were hidden by white sheets, one after another, like ghosts wrapped in linen shrouds. Clara stopped in front of the first mirror. It was huge. The gilded Baroque frame, covered in an ivory sheet, hid more than just a reflection. She touched the edge of the fabric with her fingers. "May I?" he asked, without turning around. Ezra answered behind her. His voice, low and steady, sounded like an echo of remembrance. "Of course. That's what you're here for." She carefully pulled back the sheet, revealing the golden mirror. The glass was cloudy, with opaque spots in several areas, yet it reflected accurately. Too accurately. "This is the first of the 3 main ones," Ezra said, stepping closer. "The oldest, and the most sensitive." Clara tilted her head. "Sensitive?" Ezra crossed his arms. "Find out for yourself. But a word of advice, don't work on it after sunset." She laughed lightly. "Superstition? Experience?" They stared at each other for a brief moment. A tense silence hung in the air. Ezra was the first to break it. There are two other mirrors, smaller ones, in the side rooms. They are complementary. But this one, he pointed to the golden mirror, is the heart of this wing, and perhaps of the entire house. Clara wrote in the leather notebook. Her fingers were nimble, but delicate. Do you often come here? Ezra hesitated. No, not since my mother died. She said these mirrors held more than reflections. They held echoes, fragments of memory, undigested feelings. Clara approached the glass. I've seen pieces like this before. Not in the literal sense, of course, but works that react to the viewer, that give back layers. Ezra watched her carefully. Each sentence, she said, seemed to dig a little deeper into him. And what do you hope to find here, Miss Valli? She smiled without arrogance. I hope to find what was left behind, what no one else wanted to see. Ezra looked away, not because he was uncomfortable, but because for the first time in a long time, he felt exposed. Hours later, in the library of the main wing, Ezra sat before a roaring fire. A glass of bourbon rested in his hand, but he did not drink. His eyes were distant. The crackle of the fire filled the emptiness around him. The image of Clara in front of the mirror came back to him, the way she moved, the calm with which she faced the unknown. Ezra was a man accustomed to control, to emotional distance, but there was something about her, something soft but firm, that threatened all that. When Oliver entered the room with documents, Ezra didn't move. Tell me, Oliver, what did you think of her? The butler stopped beside the armchair. Clara Valli is different. She's not afraid of silence. That says a lot. Ezra smiled slightly, but there was melancholy in the gesture. Yes, it does. He finally took a sip. She'll see more than the mirrors. She'll see me. And that, Oliver, is what scares me most. Clara woke early, even before the sun. The sky over the village of Holleridge was still a blue-gray, and the soft sound of rain pattering against the inn's window was almost meditative. She dressed in simple clothes, twill pants, a turtleneck, and sturdy boots. She tied her hair back in a loose bun, tossed her leather notebook into her bag, and set off for the mansion. There was something about her that flared at the challenge. She specialized in emotionally charged pieces. She restored objects from broken families, collections from the dead, heirlooms no one wanted to touch. She was drawn to what others avoided, and that always made her feel strange. But not Ezra Delacroix. He didn't seem frightened by her presence, just watchful, as if she were an intruder in some forgotten chamber of his own heart. Oliver was waiting for her at the entrance to the north wing, a huge umbrella in his hands and the same neutral expression. Miss Valli. Good morning. Good morning, Oliver. Any changes? None. Mr. Delacroix is in the library. He asked not to be disturbed until late morning. She nodded. She wasn't surprised. Ezra seemed to have an internal clock that ran on a different time zone than the rest of the world. The Hall of Mirrors seemed even quieter this morning. Clara took off her shoes as she entered, almost as a gesture of respect. The antique carpeting welcomed her footsteps softly. The curtains were partially open, allowing natural light to bathe the room in a soft, golden glow. It was like being inside a Renaissance painting, but stained. Before the golden mirror, Clara knelt down. She took from her bag a small box containing fine tools, brushes, cotton gloves, and a microfiber cloth. She gently ran the glove over the surface, revealing imperceptible marks of old soot. As she cleaned, she studied her reflection carefully. There was a peculiar gleam in her eyes reflected there, as if they were more intense, more aged. She ignored the impression. She continued her work. When he reached the lower right corner, he noticed something curious. A small, almost imperceptible crack that extended like a hair beneath the varnish of the glass. He bent down further and picked up a magnifying glass. It was recent. He frowned. He wrote in his notebook, "Crack in lower right corner. Does not appear structural. Possibly symbolic." She let out a small laugh as she wrote. Symbolic fissure was a term she used for when an object seemed to want to break with the same force as its owner. Around 10, Ezra appeared at the entrance to the north wing. He didn't say a word. He just leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching. Clara continued working. She knew he was there, but she didn't react. Only when she had finished cleaning that area and put away the materials did she turn to him. "Do you usually look at people like that?" Ezra smiled at the corner of his mouth. "Only when I don't understand how they work." "And were you able to understand anything about me?" "Not yet, but you talk with your hands." "That's interesting." She tilted her head slightly. "You don't talk much about anything." "That's intriguing." Ezra finally entered the room. His footsteps were silent, as always. He stopped in front of the mirror and looked at their reflections. "Do you know what's funny about mirrors?" he asked. "Say, they never show us what we're like, only what we look like. And even that is filtered through our beliefs." Clara approached slowly, standing beside him. "Have you ever seen the reflection of someone who wasn't there?" Ezra turned his face towards her, slowly. "Yes, when I was a child." "Your mother?" He nodded. "Sometimes, even after she died. I saw her here. For seconds. It wasn't real. I know that, but it felt like it." Clara said nothing. She just stared into the mirror. Ezra's reflection there was subtly different. Less tense. More human. She reached out and touched the glass with her fingertips. "There's something wrong here. Like this. The mirror doesn't reflect the light as it should. Its depth is wrong. As if it weren't just a reflection, but a layer." Ezra was silent for a few moments. "My mother said that this mirror was like a veil. It separated what was visible from what refused to be seen. And what's on the other side?" He took a deep breath. Feelings that didn't fit. Guilts that weren't resolved. Love that couldn't be lived. Clara walked away. She wrote in her notebook without saying anything. Ezra watched her, every gesture, every look. "Do you believe in residual energy, Miss Valli?" "I believe in layers. In things that remain even after the bodies are gone." Ezra nodded. He seemed satisfied with the answer. "Then perhaps you will understand what it is like to live surrounded by echoes." She stared at him. "You're not surrounded by echoes, Ezra. You're the echo itself. Try to find where it came from." He stood still for a moment, as if the sentence had disarmed something he had kept locked away for years. "Continue your work," he said, turning to leave. "But if you start seeing things, don't ignore them. Reflections here have minds of their own." Alone again, Clara moved on to the second mirror. It was smaller, with a silver frame. It was covered in a film of thick dust, almost as if it had been deliberately avoided. As she removed the sheet, she felt a shiver run down her spine. It wasn't fear. It was the feeling that she was being watched. She came closer. Her reflection came hesitantly into view, but there was something behind her. A figure. A blur of shadow. She turned quickly. Nothing. He looked in the mirror again. The figure had disappeared. She closed her eyes for a moment. She took a deep breath. The house was full of energy. She had felt it in other places. But here it was different. The Delacroix mansion did not want to be forgotten. It was waking up. She touched the frame and whispered, "What are you trying to show me?" Claire began to notice that time in the Delacroix mansion was moving differently. The days stretched out like silken veils in the wind, slow and dense. The north wing, once stuffy and untouched, now seemed to breathe with her. Each mirror she restored returned not only reflections but sensations, strange, familiar, unsettling. On the third day of work, she woke up before the sun. She had dreamed of the house, of an endless hallway where mirrors multiplied on the walls, and she ran and ran. But each door she opened was the reflection of the last. She woke up with her chest heaving and the certainty that something inside the house wanted to be seen. She arrived at the mansion before 8. Oliver received her with his usual polite silence, handing her a tray with coffee, fresh bread, and a loose leaf. "Note from Mr. Delacroix," he said, before disappearing as he always did. Clara unfolded the paper. "Today, focus on the mirror in the hallway. But if it looks back, don't stare at it for too long." And she smiled, a nervous smile. The mirror in the anteroom was peculiar. Tall and narrow, a dark wooden frame carved with floral symbols, and a line of characters that looked Roman but weren't. It was covered by 2 overlapping sheets, as if someone had sealed it twice. As he peeled off the first layer, He felt a cold breeze touch his skin. The second layer came off with more difficulty. The cloth seemed glued to the glass. When he finally exposed the surface, he took a step back. She was there, but not just her. The reflection was subtly off. The background of the reflected room was darker. Her own face looked different, as if she had been crying before she came in. Clara approached slowly, studying every detail. The crack in the upper right corner of the glass was thin, but it seemed to be pulsing. When she raised her hand to touch the mirror, the reflection did not follow her immediately. She stepped back. "No, it's not possible," he whispered. He raised his hand again, this time more cautiously. This time, the reflex responded, but with a delay of almost 2 seconds. It was like looking into a future version of herself, or a memory that refused to die. The door behind her creaked. "Ezra, he does this to everyone," he said, entering slowly, but only to those who carry something that hasn't yet been said. This is not a simple glass anomaly. The delay is conscious. He is interpreting. Yes, because he was created for that. She looked at him, surprised. Ezra walked over until he was standing next to her. "This mirror was commissioned by my mother. It was custom-made by a Hungarian craftsman who said that certain types of glass could absorb emotions like silver absorbs light. She chose this one to test me. She said it would show us what is unconscious within us." Clara turned back to the mirror. Her reflection was still watching her, more serious, more tired. He looked sad. Ezra did not answer immediately. Then he said in a low voice, "Maybe you're seeing what you haven't yet had the courage to feel." Clara frowned, staring at her reflection. "I've dealt with loss, with silence, but that's not sadness, it's grief." Ezra watched her. He was closer than she had realized. "And who are you mourning for, Clara?" She swallowed hard. Her eyes grew moist. "For myself. For parts one left behind to survive." Ezra nodded slowly. "Then maybe you understand why this mirror scares me so much." She looked at him. "You feel that way too?" I can't look at him for more than a few seconds without seeing the boy I was. The boy who begged to be loved just the way he was, and who heard from his own mother's mouth that he was too much. Clara felt her chest tighten. It was the first time he had opened up like that. Ezra looked away to the floor. "My mother believed that my affection was a form of possession, that my love was overwhelming. So she taught me to be silent. You don't have to be quiet anymore." He looked up. There was a flame there, an ancient anger, a hunger to be understood. "You're the first person who doesn't look at me with fear, and that is scarier than any mirror." Clara smiled, but it was a smile full of tenderness. "Maybe it's because I'm made of cracks too." Later that day, Clara remained in the north wing even after sunset. She ignored Ezra's advice. She wanted to understand more. She felt something was about to happen. He sat on the floor, in front of the golden mirror, and closed his eyes. He meditated. He took a deep breath. When he opened them again, he was there. Ezra, but not the handsome, dark man she had known. He was a boy. Lighter hair, wide eyes, kneeling before a dark-haired woman, Margot. She was holding him by the shoulders and shouting something Clara couldn't hear. The scene was silent, a theater of shadows. Ezra, the real one, came up behind her at that moment. He saw. She turned around, surprised. "Is it real?" "Yes." I knelt down right there where you're sitting and asked her to let me love her the way I knew how. She said she didn't want love. She wanted order. Clara stood up slowly. "She broke something in you, Ezra, but she didn't kill you." "No, but it made me hide. And now," he took a deep breath, "now you see me, and that changes everything." She touched his face, her eyes welling up. "I see you. The boy, the man, and every version in between." Ezra held her hand. "Stay. Tonight." She nodded. "Yes, I'll stay." And there, in front of the mirror, they kissed for the first time. The sunrise filtered through the mansion's stained glass windows like a shy blessing. Clara woke up in the guest room, with the soft sheets wrapped around her body and the subtle scent of lavender permeating the air. For a moment, she forgot where she was. But then she remembered the night before. The kiss, the broken reflection, Ezra, slowly, as if she were respecting a new territory. When she walked through the hallways of the North Wing, she could feel something had changed. Not just in her, but in the house. The energy was different. More awake, more alert. In the Hall of Mirrors, the silence was solemn. Clara knelt before the golden mirror and noticed that the crack had expanded slightly, almost imperceptible. But there, he touched the glass with his fingertips. "What are you trying to tell me?" The answer did not come from there, but from a tapestry nearby. As he glanced at the wall, he noticed something strange, a fold in the old fabric, as if it had been disturbed. He tugged lightly and felt a cold draft. Behind the tapestry was a cavity, a small wooden door covered in decades of dust. The heart raced. It opened slowly. The door creaked like an old skeleton being awakened. On the other side, a narrow, dark staircase spiraled downward. Clara hesitated for a few seconds, then descended carefully, guided by the light from her cell phone. The air there was more humid, full of mold and something indefinable, maybe memories. At the bottom of the stairs, a short hallway opened into a circular room, hidden in the heart of the mansion, the secret chamber. There was furniture covered in sheets, wooden boxes were stacked, an easel with an unfinished portrait of a woman, probably Margot Delacroix, and in the center of the room, on a makeshift marble altar, sat a silver-framed mirror and a book. Clara approached. The mirror was facing the wall, as if it had been placed there as a punishment. As he turned the glass over, he felt a chill run down his spine. It was the only mirror that reflected nothing. Nothing. Neither her, nor the room, nor the light from his cell phone. Just a dull, gray background, as if the entire world had disappeared for him. He took the book. It was a diary. Teal. The handwriting on the cover read, Margot D. He opened it with trembling hands. The first pages were intact, written in a firm, elegant hand, but full of tension. Ezra is too much. In everything. His silence screams. His affection burns. I don't know how to contain him without destroying him. The mirrors watch him. They know. They see what he is, and what I fear he may be. I love him, but I fear what his love demands. I fear that one day, he will find someone who sees him completely, and that she will set him free. Clara closed the diary, panting. The words echoed in her mind as if they had been written that morning. Ezra came downstairs moments later. He could smell the past in the air. He found Clara sitting on the floor, holding the diary. She looked at him, not with judgment, but with something deeper, empathy. Did you know this was here? Ezra nodded slowly, but I could never get in. It was like my mother was still here, guarding everything. She tried to protect you from the intensity that you are. Ezra came closer. He sat down next to her. She said that mirrors were like portals, that they held the parts of us we couldn't carry. She told me to look only halfway. And now, Ezra took a deep breath. He took the diary from Clara's hands and placed it on the floor. Now you make me want to be whole, even if that means breaking. Clara stared at him. Then let's break it together, and put it back together, the right way. He kissed her there, in the secret chamber. The kiss wasn't like the first. It was more intense, more urgent, as if they both knew they were touching not just each other, but everything that came before. And above them, in the North Wing, the golden mirror cracked some more. Ever since Clara had opened the secret chamber, the mansion had felt different. The North Wing, once oppressive, was now a living organism. The mirrors pulsed silently. The air was warmer, thicker. And Ezra was changing. He was no longer just a man who appeared and disappeared in the shadows. He was more present. He had coffee with her in the library. He appeared suddenly in the hallways and offered wine, books, shared silences. Clara began sleeping in the mansion, not by necessity, by choice. The room reserved for her was simple, but it overlooked the gardens of the North Wing. She woke every day to the light filtering through the leaves and the distant sound of footsteps contained in the hallway. There was something between her and Ezra that was growing almost untamable. It wasn't a headlong passion. It was something deeper, like roots entwining underground. On the fifth night, after dinner, Clara walked barefoot down the south gallery. The lights were soft. The silence was comfortable. She felt part of the house, as if the house recognized her now. Ezra appeared as a serene figure. "You walk like you don't want to wake anyone up," he said. Clara smiled. "Maybe I don't want to wake up sleeping versions of you." He stopped a few steps away. He looked at her with a gentle intensity. "What if they're already awake? Then I want to meet them." Ezra held out his hand. She took it without hesitation. They walked into the Hall of Mirrors. It was night. The blazing fireplace cast dancing shadows across the walls. The reflections followed them with slight distortions. They stopped in front of the golden mirror. "You told me not to work on it at night," Clara commented. "I said, but I never said anything about looking." They stood in silence before the mirror. The images there were not just reflections. They were versions, possibilities, memories and fears sewn into the glass. Ezra touched the frame. "When I was a kid, I thought if I looked long enough, I'd see what my mother saw in me. But I never could. I only saw a scared little boy wanting to be accepted." Clara came closer. She touched his hand. And now, he looked at her. There was desire, yes, but also vulnerability, gratitude, a hunger for real connection. "Now, I see you, and that changes everything." She rose on her tiptoes and kissed him. It wasn't an impetuous kiss. It was deep, measured, as if every gesture asked permission and every sigh was a promise. The mirror cracked. A sharp, quick sound. Clara recoiled in surprise. "Was it you or was it me?" Ezra watched the newly formed crack. "I think it was us." They laughed softly. Later in her room, Clara sat at the piano in the library. Her hands played soft, hesitant notes. Ezra appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame, watching. "I didn't know it played. I taught myself." "Music is like a mirror," she replied. "You never play the same melody the same way twice. It changes with what you feel." Ezra walked slowly towards her. "Play something sad." "No, I'm playing something sincere." He sat down beside her on the piano bench. He didn't say anything. He just watched her hands. When the song ended, Ezra held one of her hands. "You remind me of who I was before mirrors, before silence, before restraint." Clara stared at him, eyes shining. "And you make me want to stay." They kissed again, more intense, more urgent. That night, they made love for the first time. It was slow, no rush, as if every touch was a confession and every gesture was asking, "Stay." At dawn, Clara got out of bed without making a sound. She put on a nightgown and walked through the corridors of the north wing, guided by an impulse. He stopped in front of a smaller mirror, the silver one that reflected nothing. But now I reflected. Ezra reflected, alone, in the hall, sitting on the floor, looking at his own reflection with eyes full of tears. Clara placed her hand on the glass. In the reflection, Ezra looked up and saw her. He smiled, relieved. But this Ezra was not the man who slept in his room. It was another one. Maybe what would be. She stepped back, her heart racing. The mirror turned gray again. Clara whispered to the glass, "I see you, all of you." And he returned to the room, to the man who, that night, no longer needed to hide anything. Autumn was ripening over the Delacroix mansion. Golden leaves fell across the gardens as if time were silently melting away. The mornings were cool, and the fog lingered until almost noon, giving the property a dreamlike quality, as if floating between worlds. Clara woke up every day with the sensation of being between two planes, the visible and the untouched. She and Ezra had developed a routine without ever agreeing on it. They drank tea together after noon, walked the halls, visited the restored mirrors as if they were pages from an old diary, and at night, they returned to their room as lovers and accomplices in a silent pact. But the cracks grew, not just in the mirrors. In Ezra, Clara was working on one of the side mirrors when she heard a sharp noise coming from the anteroom. She left her tools and went there. She found Ezra standing in front of the golden mirror, his hands in his pockets and his eyes heavy. "What happened?" he asked carefully. He didn't answer right away. He kept staring at the reflection as if he expected something to jump out. I had a strange dream, he said at last. It was about my mother. She was sitting in the chair in the secret chamber, looking at me with contempt. Clara approached slowly. And what did she say? Nothing. But I felt like she wanted to erase me. She took a deep breath. Maybe it's you yourself wanting to erase the part that still obeys her. Ezra turned to her. His face was tired. I thought I was free. But yesterday, while you were sleeping, I went back downstairs. I took her diary again, and I read a passage that said, Ezra will never be able to love without destroying. It tore me apart. Clara came closer. She touched his face with both hands. That's not a sentence. It's her fear, not your truth. But what if it's true? What if one day I break you? I'm already made of pieces, Ezra. The difference is that with you, those pieces are starting to fit together. He hugged her tightly. A hug of desperation and love, of guilt and promise. The next day, Clara decided it was time to face the gray mirror again. Alone, she went down to the secret chamber. She took with her Margot's diary and a flashlight. The gray mirror was there, motionless as always. But this time, when Clara turned on a light, it reflected something. Ezra, but not like the man she knew. It was Ezra in a cell, sitting, dirty, empty-eyed, and there were voices, whispers. She touched the glass. The reflection changed. Now it was her, with her back turned, alone, in front of the golden mirror, crying. She stepped back. The glass turned gray again. What are you trying to show me? He leafed through the diary and stopped on a page he had never read before. If Ezra ever truly loves, the mirror will show what that love will demand. Every light exacts its price. Clara felt a tightness in her chest. He ran upstairs. He needed to see Ezra. He needed to understand. He found him in the library. He was reading, or pretending to read. Ezra, the gray mirror, showed me things. He put down the book. What things? I saw you destroyed. Then I alone crying. What does that mean? Ezra closed his eyes. For a moment, he looked like a different man. Still a boy. I think it means that we're entering dangerous territory. Why? He stood up. He walked to the window. Because loving changes everything. True love demands surrender. And I was never taught to surrender. I was taught to hold back. She came closer. What if I show you that it's safe? Ezra looked at her. The crack in his chest, the one he disguised with control and silence, was gaping open. You're the only thing in this place that makes me want to live. But you're also the only thing capable of destroying me. So we destroy together. And we rebuild. He touched her face. Are you sure? I do. Because there's no mirror in the world that shows me what I see when I really look at you. They kissed harder than ever. And upstairs, the golden mirror cracked in the center. The seventh mirror had been hidden behind a black curtain since the beginning of the restoration. Ezra avoided passing by it. Clara felt its presence like a pent-up sigh in the heart of the north wing. That mirror was not just an object. It was a sealed sanctuary. On the morning that would follow the most painful and true kiss between the two, Clara woke with an impulse. Something had changed during the night. The air was thicker, as if the entire mansion was holding its breath. She walked through the corridors in silence. The sun had barely risen. The paintings were still covered in shadow. She stopped before the veiled mirror. Ezra appeared behind her. Dark shirt, pale expression. Are you going to open it? She nodded. I think it's time. Ezra didn't move, but his eyes were glued to the curtain as if it were made of glass. This mirror was the last gift my mother brought to the house. Shortly before she died, Clara waited. She never let it be hung. She said it should remain sealed until I recognized myself. And have you recognized yourself yet? Ezra looked at her with naked pain. Maybe with you. I'm close to that. She pulled the curtain. The mirror was the largest of them all. Black wooden frame, no ornaments. The glass was clean, spotless, no stains, no cracks. And yet, it was the most threatening. They turned to the mirror and stood side by side. For a moment, they saw only themselves, as usual. But then the picture changed. Ezra and Clara aged, sitting on the porch of the mansion, she with white hair tied in a bun, he with a gray beard, serene eyes. They smiled silently. The scene seemed calm, real, achingly beautiful. Clara put her hand over her mouth. "Is this the future?" Ezra replied in a whisper. "It's a wish." The reflection blinked. Now it showed Ezra alone. The balcony was empty, a glass in his hands. His eyes were sunken, the same age. But Clara wasn't there. He turned to her. "I dreamed about it. I dreamed that you were leaving, and that I was staying here, repeating our last conversations, trying to keep you alive with the memory." Clara had tears in her eyes. "You dreamed of pain, but it is not inevitable." Ezra walked over to the mirror. He leaned his forehead against the glass. "This is the final mirror. It shows the two possibilities, complete love or absolute loneliness. And who chooses?" He turned to her. "Us." Clara walked over to him. She pressed her forehead against his, the mirror between them. Their skins were separated by millimeters of glass. "Then I choose you, even if it hurts, even if it cracks, even if one day it ends. And I choose you, even if I need to relearn how to be a whole person with you here." The mirror made a slight crack. A golden line shone across its surface. Not a crack, but a scar. Ezra stared at his reflection. Him and Clara, aged again. But now there was a new detail, a boy on her knees. A son. Clara saw. She smiled. "Looks like he believes us now." Ezra held her hand. "Then let's make it count." That night they slept in the north wing. On the floor, on quilts and pillows. The mirror watched them silently, as if blessing them. Ezra fell asleep with his head on her lap. Clara stroked his hair, as if cradling a piece of history that was finally calming down. And at dawn, the mirror still showed the future with both of them. Integers. 2 months have passed. Delacroix Mansion, for decades shrouded in shadows and secrets, now breathed a different atmosphere. It was not thunderous joy. Ezra would never allow that. But there was light. Small, quiet, persistent. Clara remained, not as a guest, not as an employee, but as a presence, as a part. She was organizing the final details of the exhibition that would transform the North Wing into an exclusive event, Reflections of Memory. Ezra, initially reluctant, had accepted the idea after reading aloud the excerpt from his mother's diary. Maybe one day, he will be able to open everyone's eyes, reflecting what no one had the courage to see. Clara had replied, "That day has come." On the eve of the opening, the North Wing was unrecognizable. The mirrors were clean, arranged in a circle, with discrete tracks of light highlighting their frames. Small plaques beside each bore excerpts from Margot Delacroix's diary, selected by Clara and Ezra together. And in the center on the marble altar stood the final mirror, now unveiled, with the gold line visible like an emblem. Ezra ran his fingers over the line, like someone touching a scar that no longer hurts. "He is cured," he said. Clara at the side smiled. "Like you. Like us." She was holding a glass of wine. She wore a simple black dress, her hair tied back with a mother-of-pearl clip that had belonged to Ezra's mother, a gift from him. "Are you ready?" she asked. "I've never been more." The next night, the mansion welcomed its first guests in decades. Critics, artists, collectors, family friends, all gathered under the guise of art. But many knew there was more to it. The hall filled with murmurs. Are these original 19th century mirrors? Is this crack part of the work? Is this light intentional, or is it a real reflection? Ezra walked among them with a glass of bourbon. He didn't avoid stares. He didn't hide behind the arrogance he'd once worn like armor. His suit was tailored but simple. His hair was looser. His gaze was calmer. Clara was a few steps away, talking to a London curator. She smiled when she saw him look at her. They approached before the golden mirror. "Do you remember the first time you stood in front of him with me?" she asked. "Of course. You were on your knees, and the reflex was hesitant to obey, because you were still hesitant to be seen." Ezra turned to her. "And now?" Clara looked at the glass. The image reflected was simple. The two of them, side by side, whole. "Now you are the truest reflection of yourself." Ezra kissed her. Short, calm, sincere. Later, with no guests left, and the house once again silent, Clara and Ezra sat on the floor of the living room. The lights were softer. The mirrors still there, reflected a new version of the house. Clara rested her head on his shoulder. What comes next? Ezra thought for a moment. Then comes life. She smiled. And the mirrors? Let them stay where they are. As reminders, not as prisons. What if one of them shows something new? Then we looked together. She closed her eyes. She felt whole. For the first time in years, she no longer wanted to run away from anything. Not from her, not from him. Ezra kissed the top of her head. Thank you for seeing me, she replied in a low voice. Thank you for not deviating. They stood there for long minutes in silence, until, for a brief and inexplicable moment, the final mirror reflected something that neither of them noticed. A room, a crib, a baby lying down, eyes open, smiling at the invisible camera. The reflection blinked. Gone. The light went out, and all was peaceful.